Welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I'm actually pumped up about this particular episode. You may sort of be aware that normally Bob Kramer would take this spot in the month, but he's been dealing with some health issues, and so he asked me to step in and take over. And so I have Rachel Hill, who is our social media extraordinaire at Senior Living Foresight. She comes in not really from the industry at all, but she has had some deep background growing up with her mom working in a nursing home as a nurse for many years. And this will be a really important look at the senior living space from somebody who's moved from being an outsider to rapidly becoming an insider. And so I'm really excited about the conversation. I do want to apologize. I'm not sure what it's like for you watching, but I'm finding that on my own monitor, I'm really laggy today. We've got sort of a new setup and we're sort of working through the bugs. I'm not sure why that's happening, but here we are. And so we're going to start with this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here.
Love it. Every time.
I know, we've been playing that for about 20 times now, and every time I watch it, I just get this big grin on my face. And again, just kudos and a big thanks to Connected Living for making Foresight TV possible. So, Rachel, let's start by hearing sort of your story about growing up and your mom and that kind of thing, and then we'll get into some of the things that you're seeing and looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, thank you so much for having me. This is such a cool opportunity, and I'm just really excited to sort of talk about the industry, what I'm seeing, and honestly where it can go, because I think there's so much potential. And that has me so excited. So a little bit about me. As you were saying in the intro, my mom actually worked in nursing homes. So she was a nurse. She was an LPN. And she was a nurse for like 25 years. And, it was such an interesting experience for me, and really the foundation of who I am, my work ethic, why I only want to work on projects that I'm passionate about, because I saw how much she loved what she did. I mean, she worked double shifts and would still get off, and it'd be first thing in the morning, and I'd want to play soccer in the backyard, and she still would make time to do that. And she just had such a passion for what she did and was able to still find time for me. And I still have a lot of those memories of what the senior living industry was like while she was in it. So I'm really, really looking forward to talking about that with you.
So you spent some time as a kid in the nursing home with residents, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you found kind of, as I think I understand, and I'll have you elaborate on it, but let me sort of set the stage. You found sort of two very conflicting things. One is you found it pretty grim and dreary, but you loved hanging out with residents at the same time. And so that left you thinking what?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, it was really interesting. So I have to preface this with I was I think 14. So I'm this preteen. There's nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, I want to do less than sit in a nursing home after school. But this was something that was really important to my mom. And now that I'm in my 30s, is something that I have really held on to, because it shows, compassion and caring and putting other people first. But she would have me after school sit with the residents, who maybe their families couldn't visit or sadly wouldn't visit, which was a really tough thing to handle at that age. But I could see the joy in their face when I would sit with them, and they'd always offer me candies, and, we would just chit chat, and you hear some really, really cool stories. A lot were war vets or have been through the Depression, or just really, really interesting stories that I am so grateful to have now. So I was a bratty little kid. I am a better adult.
Great. So we, as you know, the audience doesn't know this, but as you know, while I was in Las Vegas 4 weeks ago, I did some video where I would, at this conference I was at, it was sort of loosely a healthcare conference. So these are people who are working in healthcare, not particularly in the older person space. And I asked them this question. I said, when I say senior living, what are the first three things that come to your mind? So I'm going to ask you that question. When I say senior living, what are the first three things that come to your mind?
All right, so this is a two-part. I have, initially what I would have said, and I guess this is what we're getting to, sort of how I view the industry after being a part of your mission for the past few months and what we're doing here at Senior Living Foresight. But yeah, I mean, I guess the first three words, drab and dreary and not fun, I think would easily be at top of mind, unfortunately. But I think sort of my new answer to that is, actually lively, fun, and room for growth and potential and a lot of exciting things. So that's sort of my new perspective on that.
Okay, so you've been in it for what, 5 months now, 4 months?
Yeah,
like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so where do you think the greatest opportunities are to make it better?
Oh, wow. I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think first and foremost, there's this misconception. Let me start with that. There's this misconception of the industry, which is a lot, those three descriptors that I gave you the first go around. And I really feel like to start making changes in the industry, we have to start putting the needs of older people first. And let's even go back there and say not even older people, just people, and what they want to do, how they want to live their lives, and a way I've been talking about my work with my friends and my husband is really just saying, think about the things you want to do now. Like, I'm in my 30s and I think about what I do now and, having coffee on my back porch and just living my life, going on walks with my dog. So I think a big misstep in the industry, forgive me because I know I haven't been in this very long and it's a bold statement, but it's not focusing on people just wanting to do the same things that I'm doing now, but they're just older.
So
yeah.
So one of the things that I'm particularly concerned about, and I know there are others who are concerned about this, is that we are maybe not seen as a great place to come to work for people your age and younger, right? How do we fix that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I got really inspired in something that's been on my mind, and I'm sure maybe we'll get into a little bit of, what I do here at Senior Living Foresight. But, you create this amazing content and do these wonderful interviews, and I do my best to sort of put a little shine on it, although it's already great. But I'm actually in the process, that'll be released soon, working on this video with the CEO of Connected Living, Sarah Hoyt, and she said something in her conversation with you that really resonated with me, which was, the social impact in this industry and attracting a younger audience. And it is doing things like innovative tech. It is doing things like making this industry, like putting the fun back into it. I think there seems to be this hesitation of talking about fun in this industry, or if we want to talk about fun, in a promo or in an image, it's a person that's, in their late 40s or 50s or 60s, not at 70, 75, having fun. So my question to the industry is like, does the fun stop? I'm perplexed by this.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question to ask, because I do think that we don't do enough fun and don't do enough humor. One of the big challenges, of course, is that we're terrified of ageism, being accused of ageism, right? And I think it really taints kind of where we're at sometimes. As you know, we had Ashton Applewhite on for our Evolve Summit, and she essentially hates every joke about growing older because she feels like it's ageist. And I'm not, and in fact, I'm sure I don't agree with that, because I think that in reality, as we get older, I've got some aches and pains that I have right now that I either wouldn't have or would have gone away much faster from exercising. And so life is different when we get older, and things do change. And one of the ways we deal with that is humor. So you're taking some content that I'm creating and other people are creating, and you're doing some really fun stuff with it. I would really encourage you. The most recent one that you posted up, I think just yesterday, the day before, was about the Richard Branson and his rocket ship, right? And you took sort of some thoughts I had about it and did this crazy, amazing video. So just sort of tell me, as you're doing content creation, and what I'm particularly interested in, since the primary audience of this broadcast are operators, how would you, and I'm sitting here, I'm going to ask you this question anyway, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm making the biggest mistake, because I'm going to get off this and you're going to get 68 job offers from operators who want to steal you away, and that would break my heart. But if you were doing content creation for a senior living community, particularly video, what would you do? Because I'm gonna add one more piece of information to this, because it's a little bit of a pet peeve, and that's that I see videos and still pictures of residents do things where I think, if that's what my life is like when I'm 85 or 90, why don't you just take me out and shoot me? So
no, that's an incredible question, and I think, going back to this video that you're talking about with Branson, I think what you so eloquently said in that video is thinking about the future. But what's different, what you're doing is you're picking content that is in the social stratosphere right now. And that's where I think a lot of owners and operators are maybe missing the mark, which is interesting, because I think, I don't know, everyone's going to tune out now, but I think the owners and operators still have maybe an antiquated idea of what they're doing. Like, the future of senior living is actually really bright. So let's stop looking to the past. Let's try something new. Let's find more relevant, things in our social stratosphere, and I know we get kind of out there with the content that we do. So I understand from a business perspective, if you're not quite ready to, go all the way in, but dip your toe in the water and start trying some new things that are interesting and more relevant and more updated. I don't want to say hip, but let's start bringing sort of the picture of senior living more forward, more advanced, and stop looking to the past to try to sell something when you're using an old image. That's not how it is now. People live differently now. So let's try something different. That would be my first thing that I would say you really need to consider when you're working on a social campaign or trying to reach people, whether it's someone that's actually looking to move into your home or someone that's helping them look. You have to deliver a different message.
So I want to put you in a time capsule for a minute, and I'm going to take you in the direction you don't really want to go very fast, probably right now, because I want to in a moment take you from in your 30s to in your 80s. Ooh. And so what my question for you is you're now in your 80s, you've lived this good life, you've got a nice pension retirement, you're living in this house, you've got grown kids, you probably got grandkids, maybe even great grandkids. You might not like that thought very much, but you're slowing down physically, and maybe even feeling like your brain's not quite moving as fast as it once was. And maybe as I'm asking this question, I'm going to ask it, and then I'm going to back up a little bit. tell me about the senior living community you think you would want to live in. And of course, I know that's a long, we're talking many decades before that happens. But I guess maybe the better question that I should have asked, so I'm going to go back and ask it instead. What could senior living look like that you'd want to move into it at age 70 instead of age 88?
Yeah, I think, and you also raised a good point. So let me back up a little bit too, because maybe I'm not moving as spryly, and it is a little more difficult, and I do need that help. So I don't want to gloss over that, because that is a huge part of this industry. And obviously my mom was a huge part of that, helping take care of older adults. So I do think obviously those services and that part of the industry is instrumental to people that need that help. But getting back to the point is not everybody needs that. And I think autonomy as we age well and age better is important. So I guess what I picture for myself is, maybe somewhere that doesn't have as much space, but it's still my own home. Maybe it's just a couple rooms, one level, something easy to get around. I've got my little kitchen set up. I love to cook. And I just have like a nice little neighborhood. I'm not right on top of somebody, but I have neighbors. I have people that I can hang out with and associate with. And I think that's a huge part of this industry moving forward, is sort of starting to have that viewpoint. And that's the kind of place that I would want to move it into, that God willing, like I'm still able-bodied and can do a lot of things for myself.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we spend quite a bit of time sort of talking about these big issues in our team meeting earlier today. And one of the things that Jack Cummings said that really resonated with me is that he'd like to move away from the term senior living and just call it better living. And that, I think that's, to me, that seems like that's really what where our opportunity is if we could go out there and say, we're the better living industry. And yeah, more typically it's for people who are getting older. But what if we said it could be for anybody and it's really about better living? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when Jack said that this morning, that landed with me too. And I think, again, that goes to sort of a couple questions back, going with this rebrand or sort of a new image of senior living. Like, why aren't we just kind of taking that out of it and just saying better living? I think that sort of separation needs to stop. You want to talk about ageism. I think that is potentially like a huge part of that problem, is saying senior living. And I do think it can be just this idea of better living. And another thing that comes to mind is, you're seeing a lot of articles about multi-generational living and these new living models. And why is there this separation of, people my age and people who are older adults? Why can't they be my neighbor? They should be my neighbor.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, I think, one of the greatest opportunities. Some of the challenge we have in this age segregation really is related to regulatory constraints, and that's really a shame, because the regulations, in theory, are supposed to make it better for the residents, but I'm afraid that too often they don't. But I don't know, do you learn anything from, I'm not necessarily quite at senior living age yet, but Jack who is on our team, lives in a senior living community. Are we able to teach you anything?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I mean, I think one of the most eye-opening things, is just sort of really changing my own perspective of what aging looks like. I think something that's hit me the hardest is, I don't like this idea of aging sort of having this viewpoint of you stop living, or you live differently or a different life. Like, yeah, you may slow down a little bit, but again, I don't see much changing. And I think that's such sadly a skewed perspective that I've had. And then I think a huge part of that was seeing, my mom working in nursing homes the majority of my life. And I was just thinking, wow, that's how old people live, I guess. Like not having a different picture of that in front of me. And I just so enjoy the wisdom that, Jack really puts out there for me to take away and gives me so much to think about. And he has so much energy and, just goes toe to toe with me. And I'm in my 30s. I'm like, I need to eat my veggies. I need to step up my game. Like, let's go.
Yeah. And I think, so we've got a 1.5 million people living in senior living communities, another 1.5 million in nursing homes. And certainly a lot of the people who are in nursing homes are significantly cognitively impaired. But I think about how much wisdom sits in these senior living communities, and we have, in effect, the system has created this huge barrier that makes it so hard for them to transfer wisdom to people that would, it would help make your life better personally. It would help make your life better personally. And in helping them, it would also help the people who are essentially doing the mentoring. So huge opportunity to figure out.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. And I think, you want to talk about owners and operators doing something different. Again, they're not going to want to hear this, but you have to get more input from your residents and the people that are moving into these spaces, cater that more personalization. And, again, we have wonderful partners that are making steps toward making this experience more personalized. And I that's the future of the industry, hands down.
So I want to tackle a really hard question. And just for the audience sake, I did talk to Rachel about making sure this was an okay thing to talk about before we went live. But we have, the good news about senior living is that from a gender standpoint, we have probably, we're not even, but we have a tremendous number of female leaders in the industry. We're probably better than, not necessarily where we should be, but probably better than just about any industry sector in the United States. But when it comes to ethnicity, Black, Asian, Hispanic, we're in pretty terrible shape, honestly. And so I just sort of like to have you start by maybe have you offer thoughts about how you see it, since it's pretty obvious your skin color is a little darker than mine. And how do we fix it? And there are really almost two parts to fixing it. One is with the resident side and the other is with the leadership side.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's, race is one of those topics that's always difficult to unpack. And coming from my background, so I'm biracial, my mom was white, my dad was Black. And I think in this industry, I feel like people of color maybe aren't gravitating to it because they don't see the opportunity. And I think that leaders in this industry need to put that out there, that there are opportunities. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you work hard and you're capable of doing that job and you want to be a part of this industry and be a change maker in this industry, the opportunity is there for you. And I would say that people of color probably aren't seeing that marketed to them or those opportunities being open to them. But I do also want to be really forthcoming in saying, you also can't pander. That's one of the things that I tend to really back off from when I feel an organization, an industry purposely wants to include images of people of color in an ad, and it doesn't feel authentic. And I think there's a fine line on how we bring people of color into this industry. But I do find that interesting that, there aren't a lot of people of color higher up. And, I would certainly love to connect and hear from people of color in this industry and what their experience is like, and work on that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, how do we make, it would seem like perhaps the best answer, and it's sort of a long-term solution rather than short-term, and sometimes long-term is actually the only way we can really figure a problem. But how do we go about recruiting younger people into the industry without pandering? I think that's something that we really struggle with.
Yeah, I think it's about innovation. It's about it. You have to first make the changes if you want to attract millennials. We do care. I think there's the stereotype of we're very self-censored. I beg to differ. I hope you would agree since you hired me. I work very, very hard. I work all the time. I love it. And that's because I'm passionate. So I think there's this misconception, and I think there's almost this hesitation to sort of want millennials to come on board your organization, maybe. And maybe that's where the first hurdle needs to be jumped, Yeah.
In fact, I will tell you, I felt really badly. I shot a video last night about 4:30 my time in California, and Rachel's on East Coast time, and I uploaded it and dropped a link of it into Slack, thinking that she'd look at it in the morning. And the next thing I know is I got comments back about it. It's like, oh man, Rachel, go to bed, go hang out with your kids, don't work. But the one thing I'm going to write about this, and of course you heard, we talked about this earlier, but I was listening to a thought leader, not in the senior living space, earlier this week when I was out walking, and they made this point that I just thought was so powerful, and it sort of embarrasses me for the industry, really, and maybe even embarrasses me for all of business in North America, and that is that there is a lot of there's a stereotype, maybe even some truth, that millennials are not very loyal to their employers. And the person who was talking about this was sort of like, well, that should be obvious. And the reason they're not loyal is that their employers are not giving them reasons to be loyal. And we have seen even in the face of the pandemic, we have seen companies do massive layoffs. Some of them had to do it to stay alive. I'm not saying that that's not true. In senior living, of course, we didn't do layoffs because we needed, if anything, more help. But we saw many businesses lay people off, not because they couldn't afford to keep people on in the pandemic, but just as a cost-saving move. How do you expect a millennial who's so dependent on that paycheck to be loyal if they get treated like a commodity and discarded?
Right. I think it's about not having all the say, but feeling like you are allowed to have a say. And that's one thing I'm really grateful about, is that, the process here, our team, we're really, really collaborative. There's just a few of us here, and we work really well together because we genuinely all have our own input. And I think that's something just in leadership in general, you have to let the people on your team speak up, because why else did you hire them if they're not better versed in something that you hired them for than you are?
Yeah, and it's so interesting you say that. In just a few months, of course, you just are this social media video rock star, but more broadly, I think this is actually really important. Until you were having this conversation, I really thought about it, is that you bring a different kind of wisdom. So because if I say, oh yeah, you're great at social media, it's sort of like you're like this great machine. But it's more than that. It's the humanity that you bring to it and the thought process when you think about it. And so, and this is not just you, it's really everybody on the team, is because because we're collaborative, right? Everybody's thinking, oh man, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. Well, how about that? And sometimes it gets a little crazy, right? We had a discussion yesterday about we're getting some team shirts made, and we spent more time probably than we should talking about what the color of the sleeves should be. But that stuff is actually really important. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think that's one thing that's great, and bringing us back to that question of how do you focus your attention on bringing in millennials. It's that collaborative experience. It's about, like, I never have a fear of sharing an idea with our team. Like, okay, not everything's gonna stick, but I'm never afraid to put it out there. And I think that's so critical and so important to attracting people my age and bringing in a younger, future leaders, people younger than I am. I think that's so important to hear also what they have to say, because that's who's being left, like that's who, is going to be taking us forward. And you want to have that collaborative process with them and not quiet them, allow them to speak up and collaborate with you. And I think that's an opportunity that's missed.
Yeah, and there's actually research that shows that what people mostly want is to be heard. And as you know, in my own organization, I have lots of ideas of mine as the I sort of hate using the word the boss, but I'll use it in this context. But I have lots of ideas that the rest of you shoot down that we don't do, because our goal is ultimately to make the senior living industry better by providing resources that work. And I do know that I have more ideas than we could probably do in 1,000 years because of people resources and money resources and energy resources. And so it's so right. And I hear that when I talk to people, from the front line to even the executive director level, they don't feel like they've got much voice. So that's powerful. Yeah. Yeah. So we're about out of time here. Anything else that you want to say about the industry that I missed, that you are feeling like, oh man, you should have asked me that?
I mean, I am just so grateful for your time, for the platform, as a woman, as a person of color, and sort of being a new voice in this industry. I appreciate being heard, and I guess I'd like to leave everyone on a really optimistic note, and that would be, there's so much potential for this industry, and again, it goes back to that movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. So if you actually make the changes and make this industry better, it's not pandering, it's a more attractive industry for residents, for potential employees, and so much more. And I'm really hopeful about this industry and the work we're doing. So I'm so grateful for your time today.
So I don't want to leave sort of with one thing, because it's something that I read last night or this morning, that money is really tough in the industry right now. I don't want to acknowledge that, and operators are doing this really tough balancing act. The costs are still up. Costs are up because of PPE. Costs are up because labor is costing more. Occupancy is starting to come back, and so I don't want to minimize how difficult it is, but I do want to say that even from an economic standpoint, I think that our vision is too small about how much money there is to be made in this industry by doing an amazing job, not by cutting corners, but by helping people have amazing lives, both residents and family members. I think that opportunity is, we might not even be 50% of the way there. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being a part of our team. Thank you for helping us change the industry. I mean, I think one of the things I so much love about you is actually not your technical and creative expertise, but I'll tell you what I love most about you, and that's your passion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be a part of this.
Yeah. And folks, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Next week, we've got a really interesting show. We've got Dr. Bill Thomas and the CEO of LifeSpark. And we are going to talk about new ways of doing senior living. And I actually want to do just one little quick more plug for us. As you know, we have a texting community, and so if you text to 916-659-5287, with the word, I don't know whether it's a word or maybe it's just 2 letters, TV, you will get back a return asking you to fill out a form that tells us a little bit more about who you are, so we have more than your phone number. One of the things it's going to ask you is for your birthday. I'm sorry, it's a stupid system. I have no control over that. I cannot turn it off. Feel free to lie. It'd be cool to know the day and month, because we might send you something, but you can make yourself look like you're 200, or you make yourself look like you are 2. But that's okay. We would love to have you be a part of it. And in the next few weeks, we are going to launch something cool where we are going to give you some gifts, no strings attached. And the first people who are going to have access to that is the people who are part of our community. And that's all I'm telling you about it. So with that, thank you very much. Have a great, great weekend.
Bye, everybody.